Greetings, YouTube. The following is completely subjective. It also is not an indictment of the game Mutant Year Zero. I have no problem with the game. I think it has some excellent qualities. I like how they did the whole health and recovery process, and I think that their rules for colony building and expansion are excellent. So, no. I had done a review of it, and I had mentioned how distasteful I found the whole concept of a slave class. And I actually had people talk to me about that, and they said I was well entitled to that opinion, that I should take it within the context of the world, and I just wasn't seeing it. Well, someone made the comment recently, 6 days ago, Noobs Painting Minis RJ, where it's a guy's face, so he mentions that I need to take it in the context of the original Swedish environment, the history of the area, where they were not viewed as slaves so much as thralls or thralls. I think I'm saying thralls correctly. I'm not positive, but I'm getting close. But thrall, it's good enough. And that's more of an indentured serf kind of thing than a slave. Now, while an indentured servant or a serf is far less morally repugnant than slavery, it's still not good. There's a reason people ran away from being an indentured servant or a serf on a regular basis. They had revolutions over it. There's a reason this happened, because people didn't want to be them. So I think looking back at the thralls through the lens of they were cared for by their families is a bit looking at the history through the privilege of the position of you weren't a thrall. And I can guarantee you, if you were, you didn't want to be one. But that is less morally repugnant than slavery. So thanks for the information. I'm glad I have it. And that does put things through a slightly different lens in the Swedish original game set, which is set in Sweden. I still don't like it. I would still not use thralls in my game because I still find them, even although less repugnant than slaves, they still don't have full agency or autonomy. They cannot make decisions for themselves. They just have fewer issues than a slave does. Sorry, picking nits off my cat, or hair tufts. And you have to remember that the English version of the game takes place in the United States, and we have a long and ugly 400-year history with the word slave. I mean, one of the first exports from this continent, admittedly an island, were humans taken back to be slaves in Europe. So our history goes all the way back to 1492, or 1493, I think, when they actually went home. But as far as the United States proper goes, the area that was known as the Americas, 400-year history of slavery. And then even though after the explicit era of slavery ended, we still had second-class citizenship and essential serfdom for black people that in many ways has continued right up to 2019. They are not full citizens under the law. They are not treated as full citizens under the law. They are not treated that way by the legal system, by the police, in many ways by society at large. Racism is still rampant in this country, and this country was built on racism and genocide. And to ignore that is to do a great disservice to those who have suffered at the hands of that slavery and that genocide. So to use the term slave comes with a lot of baggage, entire train cars full of baggage. So I still don't think it should have been used. And I don't like the idea of thralls either, though I gotta tell you, I don't know why they didn't use the word thrall. Yes, it's an unusual term for America, but I can think of at least one other role-playing game that used it. At least one. And in a fantasy setting, admittedly, but it was in a fantasy setting not based anywhere on Earth. So it was taken out of its original context, but it was still used. But it's based here, and you could still use the word thrall. I mean, that's a game full of mutants. Adopting an archaic word from Europe is not much of a stretch. Okay, I think we could have handled that. But they didn't. They used slave, and again, that comes with a lot of baggage. So I think someone else suggested this, but I've finally come around to the idea. But let's look at that class as laborers. Okay, morally neutral. They are voluntary laborers who are simply, essentially, don't have any special skills. So this is the big basket that anyone without special skills ends up in. They are the people that do all the grunt work in the colony because they don't have the special skills to do the other things. Now, I'm a blue-collar worker. I'm in that basket. Everyone I work with is in that basket. Okay? Nobody really wants to be a blue-collar worker. Is it better than not having a job? Yes. Does any of us love being blue-collar workers? Not really. It wears you down. It grinds you down. And our blue-collar work today is nothing compared to the labor that would be going on in a colony for a labor class. That's backbreaking labor. Now, that explains why they're essentially the grunt tanks. They have great constitutions and great strength because they have no choice. That's how they make their living. Now, having said that, having changed the narrative to it's now, I feel, a morally acceptable class within the game, I still don't see any reason for this class to exist whatsoever. Who wants to bring a laborer on a recon mission? A special forces recon mission, which is what your characters are. You're a recon team. You go out, you find stuff, you bring it back, or at least you bring back the destination, which they then send other people out to go get. The laborers with an escort. Now, you could still do escort missions. That's fine. Your recon team could escort laborers and then establish a camp somewhere so they could then extract the resource that you found and bring it home. But who wants to play a laborer? I can tell you right now, if I'm putting a recon team together, I am not picking a ditch digger. As a blue-collar worker, I am not qualified at all to be on a recon team. Now, I have some special knowledge outside of being a blue-collar worker that I have acquired outside my career, if you will. If you want to call that a career. 36 years of running presses and making parts is not much of a career, and I can bear the wounds to show you this. But I am not qualified to be on that team as a laborer. What I have acquired being a blue-collar worker has not equipped me to be on a recon team, nor has it equipped any of the people I work with, many of whom who barely have their high school education and have done nothing since then to acquire any special skills. And those who have acquired special skills moved on to new jobs and stopped being blue-collar. Nobody wants to be blue-collar. Take my word for it. Okay? So if you want to use this as a jumping off point, you have a character that is called a laborer. They are actually another class. They begin play not really skilled in that, but you role play it. And then they become the other class, or their occupation. I can't remember what they call them, occupations or classes in Mutant Year Zero. Then that makes sense. And you could say, well, what if a laborer has a unique mutation? Because there are mutants in the world, and the player characters are mutants, that would make them an important member of a recon team. That's a viable explanation, but then that begs the question, why does someone with a unique mutation that makes them so valuable make a living as a laborer? They should be making a living as a specialist built around their special mutation. And then you could all say, well, what if we need to bring, schlep things back from the recon? We know there's stuff out there. We've got absolute guarantee that we're going to find this. We fight our way there, we get there, and we need someone to help bring it back. Okay? First of all, why don't you want another gun with you as opposed to a laborer who doesn't have the combat skills that everybody else in the group is going to have? All right? So they may not survive of their trip to get there. But even if they do, who wants to choose a human over a pack animal? This is a North American continent. I know this continent really well. And there's nowhere on it that a pack animal is not going to be more useful for transporting things from point A to point B than a human. Now, yes, you could say, well, they need to take it from the inside of a building onto a pack animal. Cool. Anybody can do that. You don't need a special class of laborer to lug something from inside a building and strap it to whatever it is that you have as a pack animal. Maybe you don't have horses anymore. Maybe horses and ponies are gone. Maybe you've got two-headed cows like the Brahmin from Fallout. Maybe you have mutant goats or deer or a moose. I've used the latter two. I think I might have used mutant goats as well, but just not pack animals. They weren't that big. I think they had multiple legs and they were multiple horns or something. They were a little weird. But I've used mutant deer that were larger than normal, so they could be used both as pack animals and as steeds, and moose that could be used as pack animals and steed. I've used both of those. Not to mention there's Podogs from Gamma World, and I think there was some other post-apocalyptic setting I remember that used large dogs, hounds in particular, but I can't remember what it is now, top of my tongue. So there's lots of options for pack animals, which are far more useful at moving things from point A to point B than a human. So again, I'm not taking a shot at the game. I'm just saying within the context of the world, I don't understand why you would want a laborer player character class. Non-player character class? That makes absolute sense. They should exist. Maybe you need them to have stats, or maybe you don't. I mean, Pathfinder and D&D have commoners and experts and, adepts, all low-level people who are never going to be player characters, but all have stats because they sometimes travel with or are countered by player characters who need to interact with them, and sometimes you need those numbers to do that. So okay, you need that in a non-player character class, go for it. But how many people do you know have played a commoner or an expert from 0 to hero and never changed into a player character class? I can't think of any. All right, and I've known systems that you started out as a non-player, or campaigns, we started out as a non-player, then you transitioned into a player character based on the decisions you've made in those first few adventures. You start specializing. You stop being commoner so much, you start going into new directions, and suddenly, I'm going to be this, and I'm going to be that, and then there's your party. So you build the character development into the group from the beginning as 0-level characters. So thank you, RJ, I'm going to go with, because that's a big, long name, for your comments, and I will, if I remember, I will send you a notification that this is going up on which day it is. And so you can view this and tell me if I'm wrong. But I don't see a reason for the class to exist. Yes, grunts, tanks are awesome, but ones that are geared as laborers, in my book, don't have a place in the game. If you have, like, a grunt that can be something else, cool. There's, for example, you could be a fast warrior, you could be a strong warrior. There's different types of warriors. So you could do that kind of thing. Just your stamina, perchance, should be divorced from your class, perchance, or your occupation. I'm not sure how you would want to do it. But I just don't see why you want to play a laborer. I really don't. And I don't want this cat right here at the moment, but I don't think I have an option. So, again, this is just a subjective thought experiment about this currently existing class that I would change to laborer as opposed to slave or thrall, because the laborer is morally neutral, and they have agency, and they have autonomy, and they can decide, yes, I'm going to be this because I don't have any other options. So maybe we could, I'm not going to touch on how capitalism might push a person into being exploited as a laborer. That's for another day. So thanks for listening, and tell me what you think about the difference between slave and thrall, or thrall and laborer within the context of the Mutant Year Zero setting or setting, because I know there's more than one way of playing that game. Thank you.